Okay, it's noon. Let's get started. So, welcome everybody. This is an event, a virtual town hall that is organized by the Nevada County Climate Action Now group, who contacted YubaNet, and they had planned this pre-COVID, and of course, well, um, couldn't have the town hall in person, but we're really happy to be here and have our illustrious speakers. So the topic here is when the power goes out, because we all know that power shutoffs will come at some point. So we're going to talk about resources, backup power, alternative powers to when PG&E shuts off the power. And we're going to start with the Executive Director of FREED, Ms. Anna Acton.
Well, thank you so much, Pascal and others, for inviting me onto this panel discussion. So this has been a topic, just to say that I work for FREED. We're a local disability and aging resource center. And we've been engaged in disaster preparedness and response for many years now as an organization, largely because what we have noticed is that people with disabilities and older adults are often disproportionately impacted when disasters happen, including public safety power shutoffs. So just to kind of ground us a little bit in this conversation, in 2019, we saw a whole series, right, of public safety power shutoffs that occurred. It was an effort by PG&E to de-energize their lines in high fire-prone areas. And so the idea was that we're going to de-energize the power to prevent a fire from happening. Quickly, we realized as an organization in Nevada County and some of the surrounding communities that we serve, that there were people who really rely on power for life-sustaining reasons due to a disability. And so while the intent was to help save lives by de-energizing the power lines, it was also putting other people's lives in danger by not having access to power. So we know that there are many people in our community that rely on power for those life-sustaining or independent living reasons. These might be people who are use oxygen concentrators, ventilators, power wheelchairs, and so forth. Or maybe they need a very environmentally regulated, temperature regulated environment because of a disability as well, so that heating or cooling to stay healthy. Let's see, when I look in the PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff timeline for 2019, we had, it looks like, about 7 events that occurred either in Nevada County or the surrounding counties. Through mainly the month of October, was one at least in September and almost one in November. And so some of these power outages lasted 7 days. Especially for people who are like in the little town of Washington and some of the outlying areas. So for many of us who have lived in, say, Nevada County for a long time, we're used to the power going off periodically, right? There might be a snowstorm, there might be a tree across a power line, and we get the power out for an hour or two, maybe up to a couple of days. But I think for a lot of people, at least that we worked with, the prolonged outage really started building on itself and causing a lot of issues. And also because of how widespread those outages were. So we immediately started hearing stories from the community, right, about how they were being impacted. We worked very closely with 211 in a coordinated fashion and with the Office of Emergency Services in Nevada County, and started hearing these stories of people who were saying things like, my power is out, I have an oxygen concentrator, I only have 4 hours left on my oxygen concentrator. I don't know what I'm gonna do when my battery runs out. I'm gonna lay down in bed and try not to breathe too much, try not to use too much power so that I can sustain as long as possible, but we're a little bit scared about what we're gonna do. Remember also when the power outage started, it was so widespread, right? It was all of Grass Valley. We saw 2-hour waits at our gas stations. We saw people driving down to Roseville to get ice to keep their really expensive medication cool during that time. I remember talking to a gentleman who called who said, I'm exhausted. I need to get to a place with power. I'm on an oxygen concentrator and I just am exhausted. It's the end of the month. I'm out of money. I'm on a fixed income. I don't have the money for the gas for my vehicle to drive around looking for power. And I said, well, what did you do during the last power outage? He goes, literally every 4 hours, I had to get in my truck and drive to try to find a place to recharge my battery. And I'm exhausted. I can't do it anymore. So these are the stories that we heard. We quickly started organizing with PG&E. We went directly to them and said, we need resources on the local level to help address these needs that we're hearing. So that gets us to kind of resources for people with disabilities and older adults in our community who rely on power. These are individuals, again, who need power for durable medical equipment or for other disability reasons. So in 2020 now, we kind of got this program up and going in 2019. And we are now continuing it now. We want to hear from people who need support and resources because we don't want to be in the middle of a power outage trying to coordinate through it like we were last year. It was super stressful. We actually want to try to plan ahead. But really trying to get people connected to backup battery systems, backup charging stations that might help power your device during an outage. We are partnering with Lars that you're going to hear from Cal Solar to help deploy these backup battery charging stations. What we know is there's no one size solution for everyone, right? So people have various needs, various levels of power. It's not, I think what I'm trying to say is that it's not always just an inconvenience for people in our community when the power goes out. It actually can be a life or death situation for people who really need that power during it. So FREE does have a local program. We are a local resource. If you are a person with a disability or older adult, you need power, we can either connect you with the backup battery charging station. They are first come, first serve. You have to have a durable medical equipment or assistive technology that requires power. And that backup battery charging station has to be useful, like it will power your system, what you need for a day, hopefully, if not longer. And we also, for those that have higher power needs, and let me tell you, there's a lot of people that one of our backup battery charging stations is not going to be a sufficient solution for them. Hopefully Lars will talk about the SGIP, another program that might help more people. But we also have hotel stays, so we can help get people into hotels during that power outage so that they can keep their device powered for up to a few days. We are hoping in 2020 that the Grass Valley downtown section will continue to be powered. PG&E is planning to bring in a backup generator. They're telling us that the outages this year are going to be fewer and not as long in duration, although we will kind of see. I think we want to make sure we're planning for what we experienced last year as a starting point. So we do have a variety of resources. You can go to www.free.org. We have emergency preparedness resources on our website. We're doing every Monday a personal preparedness workshop as well. You can get to that through our website, through Facebook events, and we can do some one-on-one personal preparedness with you to help you be prepared for PSPSs and wildfires. And with that, I'm sure I'm over my 10 minutes, right, Pascal?
You are totally fine. It's totally fine. You know, we have time here. But you mentioned Lars, and so hey, natural progression. Lars, please introduce yourself and tell us everything.
All right. So my name is Lars Ortegren. I am the general manager at California Solar, our Nevada County's only worker cooperative. And I'm a union-trained electrician and have been installing solar and battery systems for about 20 some odd years. We're pretty unique in Nevada County in that we have, or in the solar world especially, because of living so close to the San Juan Ridge and different areas, that are not serviced by PG&E have had a number of years of experience of everything from small off-grid cabins to larger emergency commercial facilities when it comes to looking at kind of this emergency power piece. I think it's probably useful to kind of start by framing it a little bit in that we really need to think about when you're looking at emergency power, you want to think about the difference between want versus need. You know, we all have a relationship to power right now where we can turn on as many lights as we want. We can plug in our blender while have the oven on, while we have the microwave on and the AC's going and a TV in every room. And the only difference is that you're going to pay a higher bill. And it's good to think back to remember that when you were in your house, what were the things that you were really needing? And granted, it's like when we're talking about what one person's needs are going to be different than another person's needs. You know, you can have one person who has a house that is on NID water and they just need to cool off their refrigerator for twice a day for a couple of hours, and they're happy as a clam sitting there with their camping lights once it gets dark, and they have a gas water heater and a gas stove, and everything else is pretty much close to normal. But then, you know, like Anna was talking about, you can have medical devices. You could have when the reason why we're doing these PSPS is because of fire danger. And what happens if your house is on a well? So just to say, I think it is an entirely subjective decision that you really need to look from yourself to figure out what those kind of critical needs are. And the less needs you have, the simpler and less expensive your solution is going to be. And ultimately, you're going to have to put a price tag on it. You know, how much are you kind of willing to spend for that security? And I think it's kind of worth mentioning too that there is, and I'm sure everyone can somewhat relate to this, is that there's a certain amount of trauma that we all feel from being plummeted from a first world to a third world nation overnight, where all of a sudden the grocery stores are closed. We can't get gas anywhere. Many people don't have water. The food is spoiling, and it's a time for us to kind of question what we can do to kind of build up our own resiliency, you know, and sometimes that it doesn't just have to be the I need this to stay alive. Sometimes you need to feel coolness at night to feel okay and secure, especially when you're living in a, you know, built in the 1960s house with no insulation, and it's September or October and cooking hot at night. And so for us, as an energy provider, our business by design is by helping individuals in the community build that kind of resiliency and security, you know. And really, when you're thinking about solar and batteries, you kind of have to break those apart a little bit. You know, we kind of have, they're really serving two separate problems. Solar really is much more about financial security, you know. So if you're looking at, I don't want to have to pay a PG&E bill for 30 years, that's a different type of security than batteries or generators. That is going to be much more of, whether you want to call it emotional security or you want to call it energy security, depending on your perspective when you're making that decision. And really, where you're going to start off is, again, by going back to what those needs are. What do I absolutely need to run? And start with those absolutes. Start with your medical equipment, start with your well, start with your fridge and freezer, and that type of thing. And then go to the not absolute, but would really like to have. Maybe you have a bathroom that is doesn't have any windows that you'd really like to have a light that you could use. You could have power to your stove, bathroom lights, television, that type of thing that is just going to help you feel better. And then once you kind of have kind of that list of these things that you're wanting to run, to first think, is there any alternatives that I can have to these loads? You know, do I feel like I can just get some camping lights? Is there a way that I can redo my water system in such a way that I have a storage tank at my house that can be able to give me that same security without necessarily needing to have a generator running 24 hours a day, or spend a lot on a battery system. And once you have that, then you can you're going to basically be divided into two camps. One is the people who are renters and don't own their homes. And for people that have the really small loads, they're going to be in that small, probably the best option for you is going to be a small portable generator that you're going to run for a couple hours a day to cool down your fridge and to take care of those real essential loads that you need to take care of. The one, I can't stress this enough, the kind of cautionary tale is, if you are in that camp, please make sure that you have both an electrician to kind of come look at the ways that you're integrating that into your house, and that you have a safe place for that generator to run. You know, keep in mind that we're talking about gasoline, we're talking about, which is a explosive fuel, and that is creating poisonous gases. That is, if it's outside in the same area where the PG&E is, for a good reason, shutting off the power lines so that we don't have some massive wildfire. And I think we can all kind of remember the fires that did happen during those PSPS events were generator based. You know, so it's something that I really think, can't stress enough, that people really need to be careful. Don't just assume, have someone who's qualified to look at it come look at it, both how you're integrating it and checking your equipment and making sure that everything is completely safe. And then there's the other camp, which is where most people fit into, is either looking at a whole house generator or solar and battery backup. Now, batteries, any type of battery storage system is a lot different than you need to look at it a lot differently than you would look at a generator. It has a much higher cost up front, but is completely silent. And I don't know if anyone can remember during the PSPS, if you went out on your back porch and you listened to the sound of 3,600 RPM engines screaming from every house surrounding you. But you're having something that is totally silent, and you also have, most batteries now are able to, even when the power is on, start offsetting their cost by basically taking your house off the grid during high peak energy rate times. You know, so if your peak rate is from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock right now, it'll make sure that you're only running off of your battery during that day, and then it's going to charge when your solar is producing power during cheap rates in the morning. So in that way, it kind of ends up getting cheaper and cheaper. Batteries do have typically limited power, you know, so the inverter, which converts the DC electricity to AC electricity that you're plugging everything into. You are looking at both the maximum amount of power at the moment. So kind of think of it like an engine. If you have an engine that is a 350 horsepower engine, That's kind of like what the inverter is. So it tells you that you can take up to, 3,000 watts, 5,000 watts, 10,000 watts, that type of thing. And they're mostly rated in their kilowatt hours, which are, a kilowatt hour is basically 1,000 watts for an hour. So if you imagine you had 10 100-watt light bulbs running for an hour, that would be the amount of power. So you could almost think of that using that same kind of car analogy, like how deep your gas tank is. And when you're thinking about sizing that system, because you have a very limited gas tank, you have to really think about what is the minimum relationship, or the minimum lifestyle that I can have to be able to make it from the time the sun goes down until the sun comes up the next day. Generators are different. A typical home standby generator is about 22 kW, or 22,000 watts is the pretty typical size that most people put in for a typical full house backup. And that gas tank, when you're talking about that, this time you're literally talking about a gas tank that's either going to be your 500-gallon propane tank that is sitting on the side of your house, or it's going to be PG&E's gas lines. One thing that we heard a lot from people who had these whole house backup systems is just how expensive these power outages are when the power goes out. First off, you have a generator that is drinking about anywhere between half a gallon to 2 gallons an hour. So when you start doing that math for even a 48-hour outage, you're talking, somewhere in that like $100 to $350 per 48 hours of power. On top of that, many generators are supposed to be maintained every 40 to 80 hours. And when you're talking about a 1-week power outage, I really hope you can set up that generator tech to come out there in time, because that's one thing that personally I'm a little worried about, is that as pretty much every electrical contractor in Nevada County has taken on generator installs since the last PSPS all the way to now, there is not a lot of people who are doing generator maintenance out there. So just as a FYI, and make sure that you're looking into that if you find yourself in that generator camp. When you're looking at the lifetime costs of a generator versus a battery backup system, batteries paired with solar are always going to be less expensive than the generator. And on that note, as Anna was talking about earlier, there's this really exciting program that is available to pretty much all Nevada County, well, not every Nevada County residence, because it does require that you are either on a well or that you are on a medical baseline rate. It's the Self-Generation Incentive Program, SGIP, Equity Resilience Program. And this program, basically what this allows you to do is, if you have a solar system and you've been in a place that has had multiple power shutoffs, which is pretty much everywhere around here, and you have a well or on medical baseline, you can get a rebate that would basically offset the cost of batteries and installation, which is huge. And on top of that, you're still able to capture that 26% tax credit on the solar as well. So kind of between those two, it's been I don't think we've ever been as busy as we are right now and trying to install a lot of these systems. But it is really kind of changed the narrative. I think kind of before this program and before kind of some of these newer technologies hit the market, we would always kind of push people into a backup generator, because also we weren't used to having weeks of no power. But now, kind of with looking at these PSPSs and looking at both the cost of solar coming down, the cost of batteries coming down, having these really high rebates, it's really helped a lot with people being able to take advantage of these systems that wouldn't normally. We have, and just to say that, just like all state programs, it is a program that has limited funding. It is about half empty now. I think, my guess is that it's probably going to go for maybe another month. I would say between 2 weeks and a month, because I have no idea how many people are going to be rushing into that funding as it starts to get less and less. But with us, we've installed, kind of the three major players are Sonnen and Tesla and LG Chem. For us, we've done a lot of Teslas because that just pairs really well with that program. We had around 130 systems the last 3 months that are all in queue and received their preliminary acceptance of projects. So I think it's going to make a big impact for folks here in Nevada County. And just to kind of close a little bit, also, I just want to say that that just like us all working through this COVID pandemic, that we as a community have had to adapt to kind of the massive changes to our day-to-day. It's kind of fun going from PSPS to COVID. And that we've had less regularity in our lives, and we've had to put our personal and community resiliency to adapt. And from COVID to Black Lives Matter to power shutoffs, we're really kind of changing kind of our conversations at the table. It's really kind of bringing up these really important topics that really we wouldn't look at if we weren't having to go through this. And so I'm only wanting to say this, as even though it feels like it's just another thing coming at us, it's like it's making, what it's doing is, I think it's really making our community stronger, and it's causing us to grow through that discomfort. And so with that, I'm gonna copy a link to I have a little piece in our blog, which is kind of going through the same type of stuff that I talked about, if people want to have some reading material. And yeah, and stay safe, and I'll have some questions there in the Q&A.
Pretty sure there's going to be quite a few. With that, we're going to go to Heather, who is with 211 Nevada County, Connecting Point, and oh my God, and so many more things. So Heather, welcome, and tell us what's
Thank you
up.
so much. Thanks for having us, and thank you for all the folks who put together this panel. It's a really important discussion right now. So I'm the communications manager with Connecting Point. 211 is one of our key programs here in Nevada County, and now Placer County as well. So just to tell you a little bit about 211. So essentially 211 is a phone number. It's a starting point to connect to resources in the event of a disaster like a wildfire or PSPS, but we also connect folks to resources all day, all year, 24/7, 365. But in a disaster, we provide non-emergency disaster information on things like evacuations, shelters, food distributions, et cetera, anything to support the community. So when you're in an emergency and your house is on fire, you're going to call 911 for that non-emergency information. Take the pressure off of 911, call 211, and we will be providing you with information. We share only official disaster information straight from the Office of Emergency Services. So that information is accurate and up to date. During the last PSPS events, we were actually embedded with OES, which was just a great partnership. You gave us all the ability to react very, very quickly and get the public the information they needed fast. We also work very closely with local businesses and organizations like ANA's to identify resources in the event of a disaster to meet residents' needs. So, we saw as the PSPS events extended in through the month of October, the first real call to action for us was, where can we get gas? Where can we get ice? And our resource specialists really hit the ground running, trying to figure out where folks could get those resources. And then on to, how can we connect folks up with free so that they can get those generators for their survival, or get out of town into a hotel room that allowed them to be able to plug in their equipment. So we work very closely with community organizations. 211 is completely free, it's confidential, and it's available 24/7. So it's a great way to just start and connect. So when you have a question, start with 211. So you can either dial 211 from your phone. We also have an 800 number. It's 1-833 dial 211, and we'll throw that in the chat here as well. You can also have a text conversation with 211. So if you prefer texting, or that's what works for you, you can actually just text your zip code to 898-211, and our call agents will be there to have a conversation with you via text. We've found that during wildfires, that texting seems to work better, and during PSPS events as well. Or you can always go online at 211connectingpoint.org. One thing we also found really effective during the PSPS events was doing push text alerts to folks in the community, just to give them updates via text, so they wouldn't have to call 211 every time they were worried if something changed. So we set that up. It's a text alert system. So essentially you can text NC PSPS to the number 797979. And essentially you'll just subscribe to text alerts. Whenever we get up-to-date information from OES, we'll push it out through that as well. So for us, we learned a lot during the last PSPS events, and I think all of us who are on this panel are in the place and have been in the place of asking ourselves, what worked last year? How can we prepare to go through this all again next year with COVID-19 layered on top of that? And I think it's important for all of us to ask ourselves those questions at work, at home, and in our disaster preparedness. So, and then how can we prepare for things that we know didn't go well? And has anything changed? So a lot of what we do when we talk to folks at 211, we sign folks up for the Code Red alert system. So any caller will be asked if they would like to sign up for Code Red emergency alerts. That's a partnership with the county. But also we encourage folks to get their go bags ready. So what's different in your life this year from last year? Did you have a new baby? Do you have a pet? What do you need to add into that go bag? Think about COVID-19. Do you have a mask? Do you have hand sanitizer? Do you have bleach wipes or something to wipe down surfaces? We're really trying to encourage folks that preparedness at this point is for every kind of potential disaster. We have the potential to have a wildfire, a power outage, and COVID-19 happening simultaneously this year. So we all need to get prepared. So I think that's what I have to say, Pascal, and I'll let folks take my additional minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. And talking about other options, we welcome Tracy now. Tracy here from Box Power. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I just want to build a little bit on what Lars was touching on from a perspective of both, reliability, which is safety during outages, but also to look at some of the factors that affect cost. Cost is, unfortunately, even with some of the good funding options out there, still one of the biggest things that is an obstacle for people choosing solar plus batteries over generator, for example. Box Power is a company in Grass Valley. If you don't know of them, it was founded by a local, Angelo Campos, and our head of engineering, Michelle, grew up in Grass Valley as well. We've been working on grid resilience on kind of several different scales for small homeowners, farms and ranchers who are concerned about, having water for livestock or crops. Increasingly with larger kind of commercial and nonprofit applications. We're working with medical centers in California, for example, to do solar plus batteries so they can keep their services going. We are also have been working with utilities and whole communities, kind of microgrid level applications to provide resilience during storms. We have installations in Puerto Rico, for example. We went in after Hurricane Maria, and then lately after the earthquakes. We're powering schools and community centers and pop-up power for medical emergency management services, for example. And whole communities in Alaska where they're running off diesel grids, and diesel is so expensive. Lars was alluding to the cost of fuel. The folks up there are having to choose between heating their homes and buying food. So a lot of this, really comes down to, how are we solving for reliability so that we have the power that we need when the power goes out for whatever reasons, and also affordability. Affordability in terms of, being able to install a system up front, but also reducing energy costs over time. And a lot of folks getting a lot of calls now is people just want to be done with the grid. They're tired of PG&E. So how do we get to energy independence? So those are, some of the big factors that we're looking at here. Starting with first on cost. So the first question I have, my passion has always been, how do we make sustainable living and renewable energy affordable and accessible for everyone, not just rich folks. So, how do we reduce the equipment costs and the labor costs? Box Power is a little unique in that we provide containerized solar plus battery solutions. So everything is pre-wired inside a cargo container or a smaller container for our smaller systems, the batteries, battery inverters. The panel racking system is pre-cut so they can essentially go up in a day, which reduces labor costs. Also, given the expense, one of the things that I spend a lot of time with clients doing is kind of a scalable solution where they can start small with just a little bit of solar and battery and then add to it over time. So they're saving money on their utility bills, or if they're in the diesel grid, diesel, and so that they can, get off fossil fuels and work toward energy independence. I can talk a little bit more about how that works in a little bit. One of the biggest cost savings is in batteries. I think everybody knows the cost of panels have come down, but batteries are still one of the most expensive parts of the whole system. And Tesla has integrated the battery with the battery inverter, and it reduces the cost by about 20% for us, and that is huge. They're also easily stackable, so we can combine one power wall, gives you about 13.5 kilowatt hours of battery storage. We can stack up to 10 of these in a container. That's 135 kilowatt hours of storage. Homes don't need that, but for businesses and commercial applications, it's a great thing. They also have the power pack, which is huge for large scale commercial operations. So the reduced battery costs, in addition to things like SGIP that Lars was talking about, are making it so that people can increasingly choose batteries over generators. I have to say that, still the go-to option, the thing that most people know are our generators. As Lars said, if you're looking at the lifetime cost of a system, the solar plus battery solution will save you more money, as well as the eliminating the safety concerns with running generators during utility shutoffs. The other big factor I think to look at when considering any kind of option for a backup system is Lars touched on this, is really looking at your consumption. So if you have lower consumption, you need to buy less solar PV and fewer batteries. This chart on the slide here is an example from one of my clients. He's got a large home in Sonoma County, and he was starting with a 50% renewable solution to power critical loads in his home, and then working toward a 95% essentially off-grid solution over time. And when we assessed his loads, he said, well, I want to have air conditioning. It's really hot then. And but I have zone cooling with heat pumps. So I'm just going to put it in the bedroom. And we looked at that and a swamp cooler in one of the other rooms in the home. And, like almost 75% of his consumption was going to air conditioning. So, we played with the model and said, well, what if we just, leave that off during outages and use swap coolers instead? So they're running, 400 or 600 watts, not thousands of watts. So there are a lot of kind of things in first in terms of thinking what is critical, and then thinking about alternative solutions that are more energy efficient. Things like lights in the fridge and Wi-Fi and charging phones and laptops don't use very much energy at all. For folks on wells, well pump, an average home is about a 0.5 horsepower pump, is running 900 watts. That's a lot of watts. So if you have to do irrigation or water for animals, or you're concerned about water for fire safety reasons, the well pump is a big factor. So really digging in and understanding what your consumption is, and then again, what is most critical to you so that you can minimize the amount of battery storage and cost that you need for outages. Another big factor in reducing the system costs is around energy management. So you probably know this, but during the day, the sun is giving power to your panels, and you're running your electrical loads off the panels, and during the day, the panels are charging the batteries. And then when the sun goes down, you're running off the batteries. So what you want to try to do to minimize the amount of battery storage that you would need, hence cost, is to try to shift as much as possible your loads to the daytime. So, instead of running an electric dryer at night, can you do laundry during the day? Charge your devices during the day? Can you do your watering, your irrigation during the day? Can you cool down your home while the sun is still shining, and then shut it off when it's cooler at night, open the doors at night, so that you're really just minimizing nighttime consumption as much as possible. It's a huge cost savings. The other big factor that a lot of folks aren't aware of is specific to your home or business site configurations. It has to do with the amount of solar production you get, of course. So higher efficiency in solar production requires fewer panels, and the batteries charge faster, so fewer batteries. The age of a roof, solar panels are warranted for 20 years, the last 30 or 40, but your roof may only have 5 left. So, looking at alternatives, the container solutions we provide are great because you can plop them anywhere on the ground. You don't have to deal with the roof, and you can put them in optimal locations for solar production. The other big factor is distance. This is an example of a client site. They've got a house, a detached garage, and a pool house, and panels on the garage and the pool house, but they're all spread apart. So, the longer you have to trench to pull wire from one location to another, the more it's going to cost. the way a solar plus battery system, even with a generator, works is that when the grid goes down, you need to have what's called a critical load panel. So you're essentially taking all of the appliances or devices that are on your panels in the house that you want to power during the outage and putting on a separate panel. And that is connected to the system. And when the grid goes down, there's an automatic transfer switch typically built in, and it tells your home, okay, the grid doesn't exist anymore. We're an island. We're just running these loads off battery. How many sub panels you have determines how many critical load panels you have. So they're expensive. They're about $3,000 each. So that adds to cost. So there are a number of factors to kind of consider when looking at, both the feasibility and site-specific costs, in addition to the cost of the equipment and labor for installing the system. The simpler you can get it, the cheaper it's definitely going to be. Lars had alluded also to the financial benefit. A lot of folks assume that the generator option is going to be cheaper, and it's true that in some cases it is. If you're only going to be running a few lights in a fridge and you want to buy, a cheap portable standby generator and plug in some appliances, that's the cheapest way to go by far. However, when you're looking at, powering a lot of critical loads or a whole house solution, batteries definitely do pay over the lifetime of the system. And the difference is that, the generator just sits there. It's just a cost. It's not doing anything for you except for when the grid goes down, right? And you have to pay for maintenance. And then when you have to run it, you have to pay for fuel. Whereas the batteries are working for you year round. So in this example, the client was saving about, with a solar plus battery system, about $9,000 a year on his utility bills. And of that $9,000, about $2,500 of it was due to just having the batteries, extending, the free power of the sun further in the day. So there is a financial benefit for sure, in addition to the safety and ecological considerations. To get that, the hard part for folks is coming up often with the capital to buy the systems, because they can be expensive. What we have locally in Nevada County is for financing is a program called PACE. You might be aware of it. It's a federal program. It's administered at the county level. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And the way it works is pretty neat. Is very easy. You just have to go to a workshop, and then you do the financing through your solar contractor installer, and then the cost is just added to your property tax bill. It's about a 6% interest rate, not great, but not too bad, no down payment, and it's pretty easy to get. In terms of credit, you just have to be a homeowner and have no outstanding tax liability. The link there is to the company called Empower that administers the PACE program for Nevada County. We have Box Power. Most companies work with financing partners as well. Rates now are at about 4 to 6%. Our residential partners are doing interest only for 1 year and up to a 20-year term, which is pretty great. So for our smaller systems, we can get the payments down to about $250 a month, $280 a month, depending on the size of the solar plus battery system and how many batteries. But the goal is to get that monthly cost down so that it's saving from what you would be paying on your utility bill while having the emergency backup. The other option that some people like to go with is the home equity line of credit, the HELOC. Sometimes that can be the cheapest source of money, depending on your equity and your bank. So there are some really good accessible avenues for most people that can cover the whole cost of the system for a variety of terms. So that's what I have to share.
All right. And by the way, for people who may have heard some noise in the background, we have sirens and planes, etc., going over. There is a small, at this time, small grass fire in Smartsville at the same time. But that is in Yuba County. And so there, maybe their Office of Emergency Services would maybe be activated if it's a bigger one. But we have Jen Tamor here from the Nevada County Office of Emergency Services. And Jen, thanks for being here. And can you tell us a little bit about what is the OES's and generally the county's role if and when the power goes out? And also, what do you do before?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, Pascal. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with the community. So in the Office of Emergency Services, we really approach hazards in the community from what we call an all hazards approach. And I really liked that Heather kind of alluded to this earlier. We have a campaign called Ready Nevada County, and we're saying that means being ready for anything. And that includes public safety power shutoffs. That includes being ready for COVID and understanding what that means for us. So one thing that we're really big on in the community here is emergency planning and being prepared ahead of time. We know that public safety power shutoffs will likely happen this fall. We went through several last year. And so what we can do now is learn from the experience last year and incorporate what we learned moving forward. We don't want folks to panic. We want people to plan ahead and be prepared. And one of the things that I'm really excited about this year is we are part of a coalition of organizations in the community through a grant from the state of California, Listos, California. Two of our partners are on the panel right here, Freed as well as Connecting Point are on the panel. There are 4 other organizations in the community, and they have funding and support to help individuals who might need extra assistance with personal emergency preparedness. We want folks to not be reacting in the event itself, but we really want them to be thinking through how they are going to be personally impacted. And one of the things that I appreciated that Lars talked about earlier and Anna as well is these public safety power shutoffs impact each family, each individual very differently. It could be an inconvenience to absolutely life-threatening. And so what that entails is folks taking that personal preparedness, personal responsibility now to really do that honest assessment. How much power do you need? What do you need in your own home? Are you on a well? Do you have coolers that you can, keep your food in from spoiling? Are you on a gas stove or is it electric? So just thinking through those things ahead of time and remaining situationally aware. So I'm going to kind of walk through some of our main talking points from the Office of Emergency Services and what we're coordinating with this Listos California coalition. And number 1 is what we talk about in the community is finding your 5. And what we mean by that is finding your 5 emergency allies who you can stay in touch with if you see that a red flag warning has been issued by the National Weather Service. And this network of folks can be connected to for, public safety power shutoffs, or if you receive an evacuation notice or warning. One thing that we're really big on is building redundancies for communication. We talk to folks about signing up for the Code Red emergency alerts. And those are alerts that are sent by either the sheriff's office, fire personnel, or the Office of Emergency Services if the Emergency Operations Center is activated. So we want to make sure that folks are staying informed. We always talk about seeking out trusted news sources. And so I really applaud Heather for mentioning that they're at 211, they're only sharing vetted information. We know that the rumor mill can be quite effective and move really quickly online and social media. So what we really want to make sure is folks are armed with the best information so that they can make the best call for them personally. So build your emergency network, your emergency ally network. Number 2 is plan ahead for your medical needs. So as Anna said earlier, some folks have medication that needs to stay cold. So what is your plan for that? Make sure that you have a backup plan. We talk about having your go bag ready. Make sure you know exactly what medications you need to take with you. Oh, I love that. Awesome. But also, you know, write down the dosages that you need. Make sure that you know exactly what you're taking. You know, when you're outside of your home, it can be a little bit disorienting. So plan ahead, get organized, and make it easier on yourself in case you do need to deploy and evacuate. Number 3 is making sure that everybody has a go bag ready. And I'm not going to go into detail about everything that you should have in there, but like Heather said, we do need to incorporate important safety measures for COVID right now. So what may not have been on there earlier, like hand sanitizer, things to disinfect with, we want to make sure that you have your face coverings in there as well. And number 4, we know that in the event of an emergency, or excuse me, in the event of a wildfire, conditions can change rapidly. So it might be, you know, in the middle of the day, but what we saw with the Paradise Fire is that conditions were dark. It was like night outside. There was heavy smoke. It decreased visibility. So what we want folks to do is have 3 ways out of your home, be able to practice them often, make sure that you are familiar with your neighborhood so that if it is dark, if it is smoky, you don't get disoriented and you're familiar with your surroundings. And I already mentioned registering for Code Red emergency alerts, but that is the way that the county is going to send out an evacuation warning if there's a potential threat to life and property, or an evacuation order, which means there is an immediate threat and we need you to evacuate immediately. Since I have folks online, I just want to advocate for our Nevada County evacuated tags. This is a new program that we recently rolled out this past month, and it's in coordination with law enforcement and then our fire partners as well. So online, I also posted it in the chat, but online we have a list of organizations that have these at their fire stations. We also have them at the Root Center. And what these tags do are really help our first responders who are assisting with evacuations to quickly see if a homeowner has, or if a family has evacuated their home or not. And it saves resources when, you know, seconds and minutes really do count. And another mechanism that we'll use to notify people if there is an evacuation order is with our high-low siren. So I encourage everyone to get familiar with that sound. It's a European siren. We don't use that in the state for anything else except for this specific program. We are participating with several different jurisdictions throughout the state, and we got permission from the state to use this specific siren. And it means one thing and one thing only, and that's evacuate, and evacuate now. So we just encourage folks to stay engaged, stay informed, be situationally aware. We say use all of your senses to figure out what's going on. If you see smoke, if you smell smoke, investigate. And one thing I'd just like everyone to know is in the event of a wildfire or an emergency, you can call 211 connecting point for additional information. We want to be sensitive that if a warning or order has been made, please don't call 911 unless it's an emergency. If you need information, you can call 211. And with that, I think I will turn it on over back to Pascal, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Just was looking at the other screen. So we're going to open it now to questions. I got a few questions ahead of time, and one of them has absolutely nothing to do with energy, but it has to do with communications. And that question was, what is going on during power outages? How is there any advice on maintaining an internet connection during outages? A lot of people are working from home, and this reader has Comcast, but during PSPS, a lot of providers go down, and especially we saw during the large outage last year. Even if we had backup power, meaning we can't work, any brilliant solutions. So speaking from personal experience, because we do work a lot from home as well, if you have cell coverage, if you live in an area and you're lucky enough to have cell coverage, you can use your cell phone as a hotspot. It's not ideal, depending on strength of the signal, but it's something. And of course, we have very vast areas of Nevada County where you do not have any cell coverage. So even if you like say, oh, just a wild thing, 3 miles from town, you don't have cell coverage. I don't have cell coverage at home. So it is very hard. There are some solutions. There is fixed wireless, there is satellite, but yes, it is very hard to maintain consistent internet connectivity where there is no fiber. However, the CPUC has written new rules and requirements for our traditional telecom companies that they actually have to, especially for landlines that are so important for a lot of people, especially medically fragile people, they need that. And also so that you can get the information. You can, if there is on top of a PSPS, if there is a fire and an evacuation, that is then where we need connectivity, and everybody's working on it, but yeah, it's going to keep a while. And Anna, do you have maybe something to add to that?
Well, you did actually cover it. I just was going to mention the piece. We've been doing actually a lot of advocacy around this issue with the utilities. There's no reason why the utilities need to have a plan to ensure they have power to keep the cell phone and phone lines open. So that's something I know we've been very vocal about. And the CPUC has taken up the issue. So I'm not holding my breath, but we're hopeful that in the future, we will see more of those utilities up and running even when the power is off, because they'll have backup power solutions for them. I'll just also mention, yeah, the hotspot piece was something that we had to go to. We actually purchased hotspots so that we could continue to work from home. But we really think this is an important topic, especially with COVID-19, because, you know, if people are trying to shelter in place, maybe you're at risk for complications related to COVID. You're trying to order your food online and get services remotely. You know, that connection, internet connection is an essential piece of it. So a lot of advocacy is happening. We're hoping that that will be a better situation this year, but we'll have to see. Thank you.
No, thank you. I mean, hopefully this year will be better. We don't know, but which is one of the reasons why this town hall is happening. One thing I get several questions talking about safety, mostly generator safety, but also, so what happens once the power is out? You put on your alternative power source, then the power comes back on. If I don't know if any one of you can address the safety issues that both to the residents but also to utility workers.
I could probably talk about that. It seems like it'd be in my wheelhouse. So if you are talking about a small portable generator, you're going to do it one of two ways. You're going to have an extension cord that is going into your house that you're going to unplug your refrigerator and plug it in and just be dealing with one thing at a time. Which if you're talking about a small generator, that's probably the best way to do it. But there's a lot of things, like if you have a well or you have something like that, you're going to need, and this is where I was talking earlier about the need of involving an electrician. You're going to need to put in what's called a transfer switch, which is a switch that turns off the utility and turns and connects your generator away from the utility. I mean, if you were to just plug your generator into a plug and not do anything, your generator would immediately die because it would be trying to electrify your entire electrical grid backwards, which is super unsafe for electrical workers that are out there. So that's why you need to put in one of those switches. And seeing as it's now July, I would make that appointment with an electrician quite soon, because I'm sure they're going to be getting very, very busy here.
I can add to that on the
Yes, please.
renewable front. So with a solar plus battery system, there's typically an integrated transfer switch. So again, when the grid goes down, the system reads that and says, okay, I'm an island. The grid doesn't exist anymore. And then when the grid goes back on, it will automatically reconnect you to the grid. And then electricians can, for you, there are also safety shutoffs that you need to put for any type of solar, but for these systems as well, so that utility workers don't get hurt. For homes that have, hardwired things like wells, you need to have a dedicated critical load panel where just those things that you want to run during an outage are on a separate panel. And the system is sized for those loads. A whole house generator would work in the same way. And then that again controls the amount of electricity. The size of your solar array and battery system determines how many hours of autonomy for those loads you would have when your grid goes down. And again, that's a personal choice and based on your consumption.
Great.
Pascal, can I also just point out,
Please.
Jen didn't mention this, but you can't really see it. The Ready Nevada County Guide, because I have a virtual background, has a great page on generator safety, which I think became, as Lars mentioned, a real problem last year. So this is a great place to start, and I'll just link to the handbook, Jen, if you haven't already, in the chat. But this is like your Bible for emergency preparedness and safety. And I think everyone should have this like close at hand at all times, but a lot of great information in there, including that generator safety part.
Perfect. And our next question is, could the panelists describe the capabilities of the lithium-ion portable power stations like the Gold Zero Yeti series, which are much less expensive than professionally installed solar or battery systems?
And this is Anna with Freed. I'll start, and Lars, you can totally back me up here, I think. So this is the system we're using, the Yeti 3000s, as part of Freed's program. We are providing those to individuals. They're fairly, they're a cost-effective solution, but they are limited in what they can do, right? So we're talking 3,000 watt hours of backup battery, which is only going to go so far, right? So there's some devices like a CPAP machine, your cell phone or your laptop, right? That's going to be sustained for a few days. It's going to work well. Some oxygen concentrators, especially if you're not using them 24/7, might work well on them. Recharging a power wheelchair, you might get a couple recharges out of it. But they are a good solution. They're kind of a consumer friendly, easy to use for the most part device that you can plug an AC, plug into. Of course, they are limited. We do have 60 of them in the community right now that we give as long-term loans, and we have about another 60 coming to Nevada County area. We have already about 30 people on a list for those. It is first come, first serve. You have to live in a tier 1 or tier 2 or 3 fire zone, which is basically anyone in Nevada County. And you also need to, have it be a good match. Again, your consumption of power is not so great that, it would be a good match for it, meaning that, it'll last you hopefully a day or longer. To give you an option to sustain your power. So they are a good option. I just, Lars, do you have anything else to add to those Yeti 3000s? You can also get solar panels to combine with them.
Yeah, I think if you would definitely need about twice the amount of solar that they would recommend. So you would definitely need to add a pretty substantial amount of extra solar to them to get them to fully recharge in a day. But when you're, when earlier I was talking about that kind of small generator type of person, that's a great alternative for both for safety and not having to listen to an engine screaming in your yard. And when it comes down to it, I'd probably say all in is probably twice the price of like a little Honda 2000 watt generator, but at the same time, you don't have those same safety risks, which is a huge benefit.
And on a similar topic, I just wanted to note, a few things for preparedness. You may be able to see this. It's a little hand crank radio with a solar panel on it, so I can stay connected to the radio even when the power goes out. And then things like these Lucy lights, I call them, but they basically recharge your cell phone or the light, right? And you can use that when the power goes out. So just a few little options there. And then also just simple things like this is a little backup battery for my cell phone. So, it will extend the life of my cell phone. It's not a lot of power, but those things can be really critical when the power does go off.
And we have one of the questions we have now is the what is the range of the high-low sirens? Jen, can you enlighten us?
Thank you. I can answer that question. So the range of the sirens is going to depend on topography and environmental factors, even including the weather. So the temperature, if it's colder, it's going to travel farther. But these are sirens that are installed within the police department's vehicles, as well as the sheriff's vehicles. So we're estimating that the range is about a half a mile, but it really depends on topography. Are there, is it really hilly? But one thing that's great about these sirens are they're mobile. So as the sheriff's office is evacuating folks on a street, they can move along. And that's why these evacuation tags are so crucial, because time is of the essence. We want folks who are evacuating the public to be able to get in and out and get moving as fast as possible.
And maybe when we first posted about the evacuation tags, there were quite a few people who said, well, I'm not sure, because isn't that like ringing the dinner bell for robbers and looters? Here's the thing. I think that these tags are incredibly important. If you have the time to hang them on your door, on your gate, first of all, you will be prepared. It reduces the response time for all the engines and law enforcement that will otherwise have to come, knock on the door, make sure you're gone. And if we have a fire or a prolonged PSPS where people have to evacuate, law enforcement is going to patrol the area. So I think it's important to highlight that it's not just going to be a free for all.
Pascal, that's a really good point. We're going to have, law enforcement flooding the area, but they are also going to be using this tool to mark whether the house has been evacuated or not. So they're going to use this anyway. So please make it easier on them. Please pick one up. Please have it in your go bag, in your cat carrier, in, somewhere close by to the front door, so it's easily accessible.
And at the same time, there are with backup power and whichever way there is, the same thing is always the time to plan is now. So now it's not when we have the first PSPS and we're all caught in with not enough gas in the cars, and people that have portable generators, no gas for those. And I mean, I was incredibly surprised during I believe the first PSPS. There were 1 or 2 gas stations that were open, and I believe on day 2 or 3 I wanted to go and top off just the tank for the car, and it was 3:30 in the morning, and I sat there for 40 minutes. I mean, that is something. Let's be prepared. Like Jen said, now we have a red flag warning. We have to, top off the tank, be ready, have the go bags ready. And I know that, Heather, I believe when you sign up people for Code Red, there are also certain tips that you give them as well, so that calls that would come through from Code Red or from Nixle, which is the system used on the east side, so on the Truckee side of Nevada County, so that the calls actually come through.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do, I'm getting to the Code Red page in the Nevada County Handbook. It's really important to add the Code Red phone number to your contact so you don't think it's spam. So when we ask callers if they'd like to be signed up, it's by your address. So, you know, I think so. Some people have called and asked us recently, well, okay, I know there was a fire in Penn Valley. Why didn't we receive a Code Red alert? That's because it's and Jen can speak to this better than I can, but it's very much about your location and the situation that is currently happening. So you will not get a Code Red notification unless they are, you know, warning you about an evacuation or evacuating your area or something extremely critical like that. So when you do sign up for Code Red, it's really important to put the Code Red phone number into your contacts so you know that that's what's going on, and that is 1-866-419-5000. And then non-emergency calls will originate from 1-855-969-4636. And I know OES has also asked folks to, in the Truckee area, to sign up for both Code Red and Nixle to be prepared with both of those, because those are both used in that region. But if you want to walk through this very quickly, call 211.
That's yes, and also if you have if you need more assistance, especially for example medical baseline. Anna, could you maybe talk a little bit about medical baseline customers? Could you go into a little more detail there, please?
Thank you. So it's interesting because medical baseline has really been a program to reduce the cost of your PG&E bill. But now it's being used around this emergency preparedness and during PSPS events to give additional support and notification to individuals. So there's a shift going on with the program. It's really important to know that not only will it reduce your PG&E bill, but it also might provide some additional opportunities for support. Lars mentioned, for example, the self-generating incentive program, and one of the eligibilities for that is people who are on medical baseline. So in Nevada County, I was just looking at the numbers, there's 1,838 individuals on medical baseline in Nevada County, which I think is really low compared to people who would be eligible. And there was like 13 individuals in Sierra County. So eligibility is that you have a disability that you require power for your durable medical equipment, assistive technology, or to stay warm or cool. And what is useful right now, if you want to sign up for it, is that due to COVID-19, you actually don't need a doctor's note. Typically, you would need a doctor's note to sign up for it. Right now, you actually newly can go online and apply online for medical baseline and get enrolled in it. You can enroll in it whether you are the primary PG&E customer or if you are a renter and your the PG&E bill goes to your landlord, for example. Either way, you can get on medical baseline. That could help you apply for the self-generating incentive program that Lars talked about that provides the rebate. It also is something that we do as part of our program with PG&E, is getting people enrolled in medical baseline to be able to provide the hotel stays or the Yeti 3000 backup battery charging stations. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And we talked quite a bit now about emergency. Jen, Code Red and Nixle, how can people actually be sure that when they sign up, it actually works? Absolutely.
So something that we started last year is doing these countywide annual tests of the system. And we work closely with the town of Truckee and Truckee Fire Protection District, who typically are the ones who are utilizing this Nixle emergency alert system. So what we have planned is next month, we're going to be doing a simultaneous Code Red and Nixle emergency alert test. So what we're really trying to do is encourage folks in the community. Like we said, the time for preparedness is now. So call 211. Let's get you signed up for Code Red Emergency Alerts or Nixle, depending on where you live. And let's get you in the system so that on August 12th, when we send an alert test, you'll receive it and you'll know that it's going not only to your cell phone, but it's going to your landline. You're going to get an email, you're going to get a text alert. So, and if you don't receive that on August 12th, let's make sure that you register again. Maybe it's just off by a digit or a character. So let's make sure that you receive that. We have very aggressive goals for this year. We have set an ambitious goal of 5,000 new enrollments. That's 5,000 new households that are signed up for Code Red Emergency Alerts. And we really need all of your help to make sure that your neighbors are on there, that your family's on there. So reach out to your brother, your mom, your sister, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, because we need your help getting folks signed up for this opt-in emergency alert system. And I'll put a link to where you can sign up in the chat box.
And it's very important to say that it's opt-in. You are not automatically subscribed. So please make sure. And also you can subscribe with your email, your cell phone, your landline. I mean, the more, the better. And I really encourage everybody. And also, of course, you can subscribe if you want to be informed of if you have relatives that might need help, you can sign up to be notified. It is address based. It is not cell phone location based. It is based on whichever address you say, I want emergency notifications for this. So you can keep an eye on either your parents or your kids. And sign up, and it works. And we have the Code Red. So Jen, you just posted the alerts, and we had a question that does the SGIP medical baseline also cover CPAP machines, Anna?
Yeah, and I had responded, yes, so that would be an example. A CPAP machine can make you eligible for medical baseline program. It also is a good example of a device that could be powered off of something like a Yeti 3000. Often CPAPs are a good match. Will last a couple days at least.
And so here we're finally getting back to power. What's the best backup power option if I just want to keep my refrigerator cool enough for a couple days? Who wants to take that?
I mean, I could, really it depends on if you're going to leave that generator, or if you're going to leave your refrigerator plugged in all the time. When we were talking about those Yetis, they work really great if you want to plug in your refrigerator for about an hour and a half in the morning, and then take the whole thing outside, plug your solar panels in, and let it charge for the day, and then come back at night and plug it back in. That's a great option. If you want to run your generator 24 hours a day, then that's where it starts to get to be a little bit more tricky, where you're either going to be looking at buying a couple of those Yetis to really make it work, because they typically will not hold overnight, even with a refrigerator, or look at some other kind of alternative.
And now, if you are not, that is so for a refrigerator. How would we have a lot of people? I just got a text from somebody said, I'm really just interested in keeping the well going. So what would be the solutions there? Because wells is where a lot of us are on wells, and what are the minimum requirements to keep these wells going? I think, Tracy, you talked a little bit about the power requirements. Can you maybe repeat that?
Yeah, so the variables are these in terms of how much you need. First is the horsepower of your well pump. So I think I mentioned a typical home has about, depends on the depth of your well and a lot of factors, about a 0.5 horsepower pump. The starting watts are on average about 2,500 watts, and the running watts are about 900, and that's just a generalization. So it depends on, you've got to check what's the horsepower on my well pump, and then do you have any secondary pumps that are coming from like water storage tanks, which are additional electrical loads. And then the next thing to think about is, well, how much water do I need? So how much is that well pump going to be running, to figure out essentially for a battery storage scenario, how many kilowatt hours of battery you need. I looked at this heavily for myself. I was evacuated during the Lobo fire, and I have outdoor sprinklers, I have indoor sprinklers, but I didn't have any backup at the time. And I was going, wow, the thing I really need is to deal with my well. You know, so I had a portable gas Honda pump. I live in a big pond, and that could be, you know, used in the event of a fire. If I was stuck here in an emergency, not that I'm going to stay and fight one myself, but I said, gee, you know, if I had to be gone, I would like that sprinkler system to be going on an automatic timer to keep things wet. So I think wells are a really critical piece of resilience for all of us up here. We didn't have time. My son woke me up and said, Mom, there's smoke everywhere. And as we were standing looking outside, the whole sky went red within 2 minutes. And we grabbed our to-go bags and the dog and ran, calling neighbors on the way. And we got to neighbors before, you know, the sheriff's department came. So it's really fast. So you don't really have time to like be dealing with fossil fuel alternatives of my point. If you can have an automatic system connected at least to the critical things for safety, like a well pump, I'd strongly recommend it.
Yeah, and and one of the things, especially during the Lobo fire, which I remember very well, what I think that we all will be better prepared, because there were, for 3 or 4 days ahead of the fire, the National Weather Service was talking about these extreme conditions. They said, well, if we had something that was above a red flag warning, that was basically, they were talking about it. There was a lot of messaging going on that we would have winds and that there was extreme high fire danger. But that night, besides of course, the wine country fires, all these fires that started in Camptonville, then North San Juan, then Smartsville, and then of course Butte County, and then more fires in Yuba County, and then it came down to that it was the wind complex here in Nevada County. And yeah, it was the middle of the night, but I'm really happy that by now, out of this came a lot of awareness for the community and a lot of work that you all do to actually prepare this community and keep it safe. And speaking of preparing and keeping safe, but also having some fun, can we maybe end up, Jen? You know, Office of Emergency Services, it's always very dire. It's like you almost like me, like the voice of doom. But sometimes there's fun involved, right?
Yeah, we try and keep it light, you know, when we can. We're really excited. We are partnering with the Environmental Health Department, who's been hosting these really exciting, it's called Car Hop weekends. And so on July 25th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., we have a Ready Nevada County themed car hop. And really what that is we've got food trucks, we've got food tents, you know, folks who would normally be out at these big, large events that we can't have because of COVID. It's a really great way to, it's a really great opportunity to support some local businesses, get some really tasty food. So we're going to be out there. We're going to have evacuation tags to pick up. You can pick up your handbook if you lost yours or gave it to a friend. And we also have, I wish I had my prop with me, we have these really amazing Yuba River bandanas that we just got in. And so you've seen probably these bright colored yellow bandanas that folks have this year. They're blue. So stop on by, come to the Rood Center. That is July 25th between 11 and 3. Get some great food, pick up your evacuation tag and some swag along the way.
Swag. Who doesn't like swag? There we go. Well, on that note, I would like to thank each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all the resources that you have posted, talked about, and we'll capture the chat with all the links and resources, and we will put this on both on the YouTube channel and under the story. And of course, the video of this is going to be available on YouTube. You can watch it anytime. But for now, thank you so very much, everybody. Please stay safe, wash your hands, social distance, and be prepared. And we all see you on July 25th at the car hub, because the food is really good.
Thank you so much,
much.
Pascal and
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, Pascal.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.